Of all the risks that there are that could affect your later lifestyle and legacy aspirations, there's one that seems to go under the radar, and that's long-term care. Hello and welcome to the Durham Talents channel. My name is Jesse Durham, where I teach people how to live and leave a lasting legacy with infinite banking. Now, Nelson's first principle is to think long range. So when it comes to you and your money, thinking long range, long-term care must come into the conversation. I know that at a high level, the biggest enemies or risks that we think that there are when it comes to our money are taxation, inflation. These are big macro level effects on us, no question about it. And of course, we cover interest, the interest that's typically lost on the things that we finance in life if we're just using credit or cash. But long-term care is making its way under the radar. Now, again, this is a big risk, and I'm not going to inundate you here with the statistics, but they are interesting when you find out how many people are likely to have a need of long-term care later on in life. Now, what is long-term care? Long-term care is when an individual can't do some of those most basic of things, like move yourself from a chair to another seated or standing position, when you can't feed yourself. These are just, and there are 6 of these activities of daily living. But when you're at that point of needing long-term care and you haven't accounted for the financial side of that situation, again, your lifestyle is obviously going to be impacted, and your legacy moves certainly can be as well. Whatever you've amassed for yourself, built for yourself, if that's eroded at because of poor planning when it came to long-term care, well, that's something that we want to avoid here by having a quick conversation about what you can do for that. So again, for me, the 2 big considerations in this conversation are around lifestyle and legacy. For lifestyle, most people later in life are building towards retirement, what I call passive income time of life. So you are making moves, building assets, amassing capital. If you're implementing infinite banking, you're scaling a system of properly structured whole life policies from mutual companies that pay dividends to privatize your banking. And that death benefit that you are building up and that cash value that you are building up, you're planning on that being used for your passive income time of life, this access to capital that you have. And yet, the cost for long-term care can be exorbitant. It can be downright, we have government programs for a reason. So for those of us that aren't wanting to subject ourselves to that governmental route where we liquidate all of our assets to accommodate that lifestyle of necessity, again, put yourself in those shoes, or some loved one of yours. Again, this doesn't necessarily have to be just for you, this thought exercise to imagine, what do you want your parents' end of life to look like, passive income time of life? What about a spouse? And then, of course, yes, for yourself as well. So for all of those relevant people, could be a grandparent, could be a parent, could be yourself, could be a spouse, could be everybody. These are all conversations and scenarios worth having if you're wanting to build towards a lifestyle where you have options. Keep long-term care in mind. I dare you to look up, I would encourage you to look up what it could cost for long-term care in your state in the event that you needed long-term care. It's a costly expenditure. And then also legacy. For legacy purposes, it makes sense to account for our potential need of long-term care so that we don't erode unnecessarily what it is that we've built otherwise. It's a rough situation when folks are liquidating assets that they have and I have these stories in my own family again, where grandpa sold the farm, right? To be able to move closer to town, to be closer to the doctor's offices, etc. If we had the option of not having to sell the farm or not having to liquidate this or do that because we had a separate pool of liquid capital or recurring distributions that were coming to us because of anticipating this need, building towards this need, accounting for this need. I would prefer to have more options, so that's why I'm hosting the conversation now, to encourage you to think about that as well, so that you could build the kind of lifestyle and legacy even in the event that you or someone you love deeply is in need of long-term care. So having long-term care for me is a way of protecting your provisions. So more often than not, long-term care, for example, is actually handled by a family member. So if we can financially now proactively provide for a source of income in the event that we or someone that we love is in need of long-term care, and we're having family members who they're setting aside their jobs, their homes, their needs to be able to help us, or we're doing that for someone else in a prior generation perhaps. We're helping offset that work with the long-term care policy. And then again, of course, a long-term care policy can help you protect the death benefit and cash value that you've built up otherwise in a system of whole life policies if you're implementing infinite banking. So it's certainly a way for us to be able to make things easier for ourselves, for our family members, and to protect our other protections, protect our other assets, protect our other provisions. So I am encouraging you to consider long-term care policies from mutual life insurance companies. And this is an if type of an insurance. Now the statistics are heavy, again, of course, towards most people needing some form of long-term care. So you or somebody you know is going to have a need of long-term care. Now, long-term care can look lots of different ways. Now, there are the types of long-term care where it's much like term insurance. You pay a certain premium in the event, of course, that you need that long-term care in that particular time, then there will be those benefits. Also, there are long-term care contracts that are built on whole life insurance policies, meaning there's a death benefit, there's a cash value, there are lots of advantages. So it's not just a scenario of, well, this will only give us a benefit if we have a need. Not so. Now, with modern long-term care policies can be built on a whole life insurance chassis with guarantees, which is really neat. And then even based on annuities, which is another guaranteed product from these life insurance companies. So just to whet your appetite, there are lots of details and more than I'll mention here that are worth being aware of. The fact that premiums could be one time or ongoing. The fact that coverage could be, you could elect for a certain amount of coverage or a lifetime of coverage. The coverage could be for just yourself or a spouse. And again, remember, it could be for mom and dad if you're looking at these types of policies on a different generation. And you can even stack these policies. It behooves us, of course, to pay pennies on the dollar now when we're in our 30s or 40s, if that's where we're at, for that type of protection in the future. And then, of course, as we age, we can buy more of these policies to build a more robust system of stacked policies, stacked coverage and benefits for our later use. And again, ultimately, if we were in that minority that didn't use them, we could still be building more net worth, more windfall because of the death benefit. If we're using a whole life-based long-term care policy, we could still have cash values and lots of other advantages. So I would encourage you to have the conversation. If you're looking up the family tree, what do your folks, what do your grand folks want things to look like? What kind of protection should we maybe consider putting in place? What kind of lifestyle and legacy do we want to build and keep? So have the conversation. What do you want things to look like for you and yours? Have that conversation. Now, if you're seeing this and you want those details, no worries. I have had 2 conversations so far with a very experienced individual and professional in the space of long-term care. This is someone that's been on the channel before. Her name's Robin Washington. She's a great friend, and she has both personal and professional experience, a wealth of it, when it comes to long-term care. I would encourage you to check out that information And if you have questions about what you have learned or would like to speak with me, you can find me at durhamtalents.com. You can begin watching that information here. Live and leave a lasting legacy.